Hello, Patricia. How are you today?
I am fantastic. How are you doing, Donna?
I'm doing okay. I am doing all right. Life
Good.
is life is good, you know. Hello, Patricia. How are you today?
I am fantastic. How are you doing, Donna?
And I didn't mute us. Okay, there we go. Because I was putting a link on Facebook.
Okay. So, so what's new and exciting?
I had my book come out last week. That's been good. Um, Goldie Licks and the Bear Brothers Band. I'm working on the follow-up now well, not as we speak, but I'm working on the follow-up to that and just getting some stuff done um, for my authors like you.
Yes. That's so exciting to have a book come out. I mean, it's nerve-wracking, but at the same time, it's exciting.
Oh, exactly. I mean, I'm still waiting for some reviews and that, I didn't finish ahead of time like I wanted to. And that happens sometimes. We get to a place where we think we're going to do really well and sometimes time gets away from us, so we don't get to do everything we want to do per se.
And it just seems like time is just flying by these days. Like it just seems like I could not believe it's the 19th of May today. I could
I,
not believe that. I'm like,
I
no.
I had a conversation with somebody exactly about that. I'm like, where did this month go? I mean, it's like we were just starting and then here we are.
Yeah,
And they say, there is a study that says as you get older, time moves quicker. And I remember when time started moving quicker. It was like, I think I was a sophomore in high school, and we're getting ready to move to a different part of the state, and time seemed to speed up. Everything
hmm,
started flying by. But they say that as you get older, time starts moving quicker because you're not having the experiences you used to have.
that's true.
So your mind, it's kind of the mundane. So when you're doing the mundane over and over again, time passes much quicker,
Hmm.
especially now with technology that we use all the time.
Exactly. Exactly. And it's funny because I actually had this conversation at work with a client that was in today and we were talking about it and he's like, what's the date? And I'm like, well, I gave him the date and he's like, no, you know, it can't be. It's only the fourth. I'm like, it's the fifth month.
Wow, you're way off, dude.
But I think we get so used to running and just running and running and running and running that we overlook the nice quiet moments. Um, and that was one of the reasons I took my trip very recently. I went for a road trip, as we know, and it was great to just kind of disconnect from everything. Like it was just the three of us. It was a family in the car, and we hit the open road and we went. And I just had my phone with me, and literally I didn't look at Facebook. I didn't look at anything other than just making sure my music was playing and my headphones were charged because I love to ride to music and my music not everyone in the car likes. So I'll take my headphones. And we went down through Weyburn and Estevan in southern Saskatchewan, and it was just unique because where I'm at, you can look at farmers' fields and you can see trees. Like you can at the edge of the fields, you can see down there. There's miles, like it's miles and miles and miles of field after field after field, and they have these massive tractors that take up 3 lanes of highway and they're pulling these 30, 40, 50, 60, 100 foot pieces of equipment behind them. They look like matchbox cars in these
Wow.
fields. And it was just amazing to see. So we're going back. We're gonna redo the trip in August once the fields are all up and in full bloom, so to speak, because it'll be a lot of wheat, soy, canola, and the fields will be just absolutely gorgeous. It'll be fields of green and gold and yellow, and it'll be beautiful. So we're really excited about that. That's a highlight that we're looking forward to in August. But it gave me a chance to disconnect and
Mhm.
recharge my batteries, and I needed that.
And it makes sense, total sense. And that's one thing they were saying too, is that we don't allow ourselves to be bored anymore and appreciate what we have, as far as nature and everything. And I live in a place, there's farms coming toward here from my old town. in Harvard. I used to drive this country road to come to a metaphysical store I worked at, which kind of ties into what we're going to talk about today. But because I used to do readings. But as I would drive there, there's all these farm fields, and I'm used to seeing that. However, and this is also going to tie into what we were talking about. There was one farm that right next to the farmhouse is the cemetery. And what was planted around the cemetery? But corn. And a couple of times, like, hi, Malachi. So many times I wanted to stop and take a picture because who would do this? But the next season they planted something else. They were rotating crops. But it was just like, this is so perfect for a Stephen King cover.
Hmm.
S-
Yeah. And
But
it's funny because where I'm at, you talk about fields around the cemetery. Here, where I'm located, um, we have a cemetery, and wrapping around it is a row of trees, and then on the other side of those trees is open field. It's farmer's crop.
well, at least you had trees. This was just right there. It's kind of wild. So when I kind of tagged the show for anybody who was going to watch today, I said that we were going to talk about metaphysical and paranormal, because both of us have written aspects of that in our novels.
Hmm.
Um, the very first thing I ever published, I have two stories. It's out of print now, is Vicious Bites. That's not the actual book. I have two short stories in there. And they were dealing with vampires. Of course, by the cover, you could tell that. So my first foray into actually publishing was a vampire story, a vampire romance, actually, two of them. So I like dealing with the paranormal, and I make sure that in each of my books, well, not so much the last two books I wrote, but like this one especially, we were talking about the fact that we were talking about witches. The main character, while she is a lead singer, or she's a solo artist, a singer, she's also very much into practicing magic as well as reading cards. So I kind of try to blend that world together with my books.
Yes. Yes. In I have Lena, one of my pen names. She's got one out that is um it blends physical mediumship with with empathy, and then you have on the other side you have a practicing Wiccan who weaves love spells to find true love. He doesn't use them for the dark side, but I mean, it's a love spell. And so weaving that in it and just trying to be as accurate, not accurate, but authentic, you
Hmm.
know, because you don't want to misrepresent anything, but at the same time, like it's the resident ghost that's here. I live in a haunted house. Um, is it's actually really interesting because I get the sense that he approves, and that's a big thing for me.
I would never live in a haunted house. However, I do have a haunted toy. It's not going to do anything right now. My husband gave me that years ago for Valentine's Day. And before I moved out of my other house, it started working by itself. Just
Mhm.
started talking, and it says I love you and it says goodbye. And after I packed up, it stopped. It stopped when I moved. So when I was going through chemo last year, so I moved in November of 2024.
Mhm.
Last summer during chemo, I had a box in my office and I started hearing it again. That thing was bought, I think, in 2014. The battery should be dead. It was just going to town. And yeah, it's quiet, but sometimes it still will make not I love you or goodbye. It just kind of makes a little chirping noise. So
Mm.
when my friends are like, why do you still have it? They're like, I would have got rid of it. I'm like, I know who it is. I'm not worried about it.
No.
It's not evil. So, but yeah, I don't, there was a house when we were looking at houses once that we walked into. But even before we got in, we pulled up to the house with realtor, and I'm like, I'm not going in. And my husband's like, why? I'm like, I just have a feeling that no. Oh, come on, we need to look at it. And we went in, and I got into the living room. I stepped into the kitchen, and I'm like, I'm out of here. And there was this creepy half door upstairs, kind of guess going to an attic maybe or something else. But it was like, I'm not, I just knew this house was bad news. So we didn't we got out of there, but my husband was very insistent on looking at it. I'm like, no, no.
Yeah. Well, I think if you don't understand or you don't have that sense, it
Hmm.
doesn't bother you as much. You have to be open to it
Yeah,
to really
yeah,
for it to really impact you.
yeah. And once you're open to it, then you pick up on things all the time, and you get information which may not make sense to you.
Hmm.
But sometimes, especially if you're with somebody else, sometimes it'll just explain itself if you ask somebody else a question about it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, one time I was doing a reading for somebody and Casper the Ghost came up. Casper the Ghost means absolutely nothing to me. I mean, it was a cartoon. Yes, I remember that. It was a movie. Yes, it meant nothing to me. But yet in the reading, this little ghost, I'm seeing this little ghost in my head. It's just popping around. And I looked at the client and I said, "Does Casper mean anything to you?" She goes, "Oh, yeah, my grandmother and I used to watch that all the time." And that can happen even in your everyday life. Sometimes you get a message for somebody else and you don't understand why.
Yeah.
But anyway, so let's talk about your books that are in that genre.
Ooh. So we have three of them um that are in that. The first one, of course, is Fate and Flambe, because that's the one that I mentioned earlier about heat. So character A is a physical medium who runs a cemetery and mortuary. It's
I
family
don't know that I
business.
would. If I were a medium, I think I'd be staying away from that.
Well, he thought about doing that at one point when he was a teenager, when him and his boyfriend broke up, and but it didn't materialize because he had friends there that he just wanted to stay in touch with that he couldn't, you know?
Yeah, yeah, fair enough, fair enough.
Um, and then the character B is a practicing Wiccan. He weaves magic spells to find true love and to enhance and all of those sorts of things. The kicker is that they're exes.
Ah,
And in Fate and Flambe, Ares, who's character A, has a Civil War era ghost who's haunting him, who's like, "You need to help me find this woman. She promised to wait for me. Her dad didn't approve, but she promised to wait for me. She was a Southern belle." And so he's desperate to help put this ghost to rest because this ghost is just so insistent on finding this girl. And so he goes to this bakery that's run by these Wiccans. And he's like, "I need a spell for this. I need a spell to find true love. I need to, you know, his plan is to use it to help the ghost. Well, plans go awry, and it winds up being the catalyst for him to find his way back to his ex. Now, things are not smooth sailing by any stretch of the imagination because there is a lot of antagonistic entities between them. The ex has a really nasty piece of work aunt who firmly believes that they didn't belong together because Aries is too dark and gothic, and he's just not this clean cut boy that her nephew belongs with. And there's some secrets that have to be unraveled and revealed. And it turns out that the whole reason that they split up wasn't because of what they thought. It was something else. It was orchestrated by someone else weaving a magic spell.
okay.
And so it's very short. It's only about 15K, but it is a great little story and it introduces these guys and they have been talking to me recently. They've started talking to me and they're like, you know, we want a longer book. We want a bigger book. We want more. We want to share our story. So I may rewrite it and extend it and turn it into a full length, depending on how much they want to talk to me.
Understand. For anybody that's watching, hi, and
I,
you are more than welcome to ask questions if you have them.
mhm.
And that's the thing, our characters will start talking to us at times, and you just have to go with it. I mean, Nigel, I always go back to Nigel because he was just a throw. I mean, he was a side character. There was no reason for him to have a voice. Yet the first book ever published was him.
Hmm.
And Russell has tended to do that as well. Russell has his imprint on at least most of my books now. And he was a total throwaway character and worth waiting for. Just he was going to be the guy who fixes everything, and that was it. And yeah,
Yeah.
just
Yeah. Well, and I think between Aries and, I think their relationship just, it needed to age,
mhm.
because it's a second chance romance and they needed time apart so that they could become who they were supposed to be so that they could come back together.
And that's an important thing. I mean, that them coming back together, you have to build the angst, you have to build the longing in some
Hmm.
cases. So, yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where it's like you have to create, and if the story gets expanded, the story gets expanded.
Yeah. Oh, I'm looking forward to it. Although Aries isn't talking quite as much right now as the house. And when I say the house, I'm referring to two of the other books, which are currently on sale.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Rebel and Cooper. Rebel is the first book, and I wrote that it was supposed to be a standalone. He's a physical medium, yes. He's gifted, but he has a farmhouse and a farm, and he likes his solitude. And he kind of gets thrown into a situation where his solitude doesn't work because he has 12 house guests that can never leave. 13 if you include the house, because the house itself is its own sentient being. Um, so he lives in a very unique um situation where he uses his gifts to help find people to solve crimes, that sort of thing. He talks to the ghosts to help solve crime. And he becomes embroiled in this case where he becomes a suspect because they
Mm.
believe, because he's got knowledge of this woman that's vanished, that he's responsible, that he knows something. And so um when he winds up working with a constable, which is a Canadian RCMP officer, um, because it's set in Canada. And him and his partner, unwilling perhaps partner, because he's the cop that thinks that he's responsible for this disappearance. He's got to navigate not only his gifts, but he's also got to deal with a frustrated ghost of a 15-year-old who was murdered. So he's trying to help her when she's not ready to be helped. He's dealing with his house full of ghosts. Now he's got a cop on his tail who's refusing to take no for an answer and not staying away, and kind of just Gideon is just pushing his way into his life. And so he's finding that his solitude is not so much solitude anymore. But I think that for him, writing him, um, a rebel needed something to pull him out of the shadows, because he was going down a path of self-isolation that would have ultimately, I think, been incredibly detrimental to him. And yes, I know he's a fictional character, but at the same time, there's bits and pieces of reality that's written into him, and he's the kind of person that needs human contact, not just the dead, but he needs contact with the living. He needs to be able to close down and focus on himself, focus on the living, to recharge those batteries. And when he's not given that opportunity, or he doesn't allow himself to do that, it drains him. And then we have, you know, we're dealing with depression, we're dealing with, intrusive thoughts, we're dealing with all of these things that kind of, you know, and so Gideon is a really, he's a powerhouse in two ways, and in that he pulls Rebel from the brink of his self-isolation, of course, but he's also the driving force for Rebel to really want to help this girl ghost solve her murder, because he sees it as a way of not only getting his solitude back, but it also as a way of reconnecting with his gifts, even though he sometimes feels that they're not really gifts, but they're gifts.
Well, and the thing is also what people don't think about when you're dealing with medium stuff, when you're dealing with the undead or the dead, you're dealing with the faction of sometimes spirits like to attach to you.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes spirits will do things that you may not be comfortable with. And you may, I'm not going to say body jump, but there are cases of body jumping,
Mm-hmm.
but they can attach to you and you can start feeling things that maybe aren't any part of you at all.
And Rebel goes through that because of being that he's a physical medium, he goes through that. He feels what the dead person did when they died. So which is not necessarily the same universal term, physical medium.
No, we've had this discussion.
We've had this discussion a time or two. Um, but he definitely feels it. He feels their pain. He feels their emotions. He feels their wounds. There's nothing like being woken up at 1 o'clock in the morning, drowning in your own blood and realizing that you're whole and healthy and there's no wound there. You're sitting up in a bed. You're not, in some dingy little corner of some rundown barn with your throat cut or something like that. Um, so it's really, but the challenge when you start writing these is how much you want to put into there with and how much research you're going to do and how much authenticity you're including because you want to make sure that the reader understands what's going on, but you want to suspend that reality a little bit, but not so much that they're going like that can't happen, you
Well,
know?
I guarantee you, I can tell from my own personal experience, feeling how the dead died, it is real.
Mm-hmm.
Not every medium feels that, and I've gotten to the point where I basically drew a line in the sand and says, "We're not doing that anymore," because it's not fun. But
Mm-hmm.
you pick up on things that there's no way you should be able to know when you go
Exactly.
down that path, and it's a wild ride. It really is, and it's something that I don't like doing very often anymore.
Yeah, no. No, I'm not a huge fan of it. I mean, it's kind of interesting when you get up in the middle of the night to go for a drink of water or, visit the restroom and there's a shadow moving across through your house, those sorts of things. Um, but I think at some point you have to put your foot down and say, no, this is my hard stop.
Yeah, and I mean, not all spirits are bad because I know a story. My late husband was diabetic and he was legally blind for the most part. He could not really see. He always had thick glasses. Before we got together, he said one night he was woken up in the middle of the night because something grabbed his ankle. And when he opened his eyes, he clearly saw, which there was no way my husband could clearly see anything without his glasses, but he clearly saw a man at the end of the bed in a leather duster with a cowboy hat. And it turns out that when he woke up and sat up, his blood sugar was going low. So whoever that spirit was, because he said, I felt it, it grabbed my ankle. And I mean, the first time he was gifted, he never wanted to acknowledge his gifts. But one Halloween, we were all meditating over at my friend's house. She was practicing Wiccan, and we were meditating. And he did not want to meditate. He was, it was all, how do you know? That was his big thing until certain things were proven to him. And he said he saw my mom sitting next to me. He didn't tell me for months later because finally our friend said, just tell her. And so he did. And I pulled out a picture. I said, is that who you saw? Yeah. But the funniest thing is we only went on a ghost hunt once and we were there and we were doing the tape recorder and the girl's like, okay, think of a question and we'll see what the ghost says. So, excuse my French here. My husband's statement was, "This is bullshit." So we went back to my friend's house and we're listening to the tape, and basically the voice on the recording said, "John thinks this is bullshit," and his jaw dropped. He was just like, "Okay, I might be wrong," because he would always forever go, "How do you know?"
Yeah.
And I told him, I think a year before we started dating, I read his cards. And I told him some blonde was going to come in and rock his world and turn it completely upside down. And he looked at me, he says, "Who is that?" I'm like, "I have no idea." He's like, "You going to be my ex-girlfriend?" I'm like, "Maybe. I don't know." Well, yeah, I was blonde at the time. So, and no, I was not interested in him. But there you go. So sometimes, it just the information comes and you say it like it is, and that's it.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And I think, being open to those things, honestly, I think it makes me a better writer.
Yes. Yes. And I was going to talk to, the candle, the magic thing. I remember when I had my little space in Harvard, the hairdresser whose shop I was part of, she's like, "I need you to make me a love spell." She's like, "I know you do candle magic. I need you to make me a love spell." I'm like, I don't do love spells because you might get more than you bargained for." She's like, "No, no, no, I want a love spell." I said, "Okay, this is what we're going to do. Instead of attaching it to a person, you put in all the pros you want and all the cons. And give me a list of both of those things and I'll make you something." And I did. But it wasn't focused on one person. And I think that's where a lot of people that really want to embrace magic, embrace that love spell, want it focused on that one person. And that, like you were saying, though, like you were saying, that could backfire because what can that turn into? Obsession.
Hmm. An obsession is very, very good in dark romance, but not in real
Yes.
life.
No, no. Because, let's be honest, if Christian Grey didn't have the money he had, as we all have said at one point, he'd been a stalker.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So, um, what else you got going on besides the sale and books and
I've started a new crochet project.
it's not just a little crochet project either.
No, no, it has over 600 pieces. I can show you what the pattern is. I can show you
Okay,
if you like.
that's fine. And I'm
Um,
not I'm not saying we're done with the metaphysical bit, but go ahead.
no, we're not. That is what I am working on.
I don't see it. Ah, there we are. Wow. Are you giving it to somebody or are you just making it for grins and giggles?
I am making it to see if I see how I can do with it.
Okay.
And then if it's doesn't drive me crazy to make it, I will probably make a couple more and sell them.
As Darth Vader would say, most impressive. I don't have the patience to do that. I tried crocheting once and I just, not for me. Not for me. So I applaud you.
It's my go-to for relaxation.
Okay, fair enough. So what pulled you into, I know you're open to stuff, but what pulled you into wanting to write the paranormal and the metaphysical type stuff?
There was a voice. I know that sounds really odd, but it was a voice. I had a vision before when I first started writing Rebel. I had a vision. And in that vision, the character was saying, "You need to tell my story. You need to tell people that I'm real, that I exist." And and as I wrote Rebel, and then I started Cooper, and I got through Cooper, I realized it wasn't a human character. It wasn't a human voice that was guiding me. It was the house, literally, because the house is its own energy. And that vision, it came to me in a dream. And I got up in the morning and it was so vivid. I could not stop thinking about it for like 2 days. So I figured I'll write it down and then that put it aside and we'll be good, until I'm ready to work on it. I started writing it and initially Rebel was going to be a woman. Um, and I got a chapter in and it felt wrong. There was something off, something that just didn't feel right. So I went back to the drawing board, as they say, and started over again. And I started writing this story. The first 2.5 chapters are literally the dream that I had. And
Okay.
then once I got into there, then it just kind of opened and the rest of it came flooding out. And it was probably one of the easiest books to write, but it was also one of the hardest
Okay.
because the characters didn't want me to follow the script that we are so comfortable in romance in the romance genre. So in book one, Rebel and Gideon are involved. They have their split because, of course, they Rebel thinks that Gideon's using him to solve this case, and so on and so forth. Um, they have this big falling out, this big fight, and Rebel gets kidnapped by the guys that have kidnapped this woman. And here's where I break the rules in romance. I killed Rebel. Um, because Rebel wasn't meant to be a living character.
Mm-hmm.
He was meant to be a ghost. He was meant to be a spirit. That was what his destiny was. So I killed off Rebel. And then I'm like, and as I'm writing it, I'm like, okay, well, Gideon gets the news. You know, there's a trial. He's coming out of the courthouse. And as he's walking out the doors, he's talking to his boss. And his boss is letting him know that Rebel has passed away. And he's devastated. Like he's just grief stricken. He doesn't even, he's so emotionally blinded. He doesn't see the guy that's standing right in front of him with a handgun and winds up shooting him. So I wound up killing off both my main characters in Rebel.
But if they're together in the afterlife, did you really break the rules?
And they do wind up together. They do have their HEA. I mean, yes, I had to kill both of them first, but that was their deaths were the catalyst to them overcoming the hangups that they had in real life as living members of society. It gave them the opportunity, not gave them, it forced them to confront their fears about being in a relationship because both of them were tied to that house. Gideon showing up on Rebel's doorstep was not random, even though neither men were aware of that. It wasn't random. It was all part and parcel of this of the scope of their of what was happening because the house is a collector. It's a collector of souls. Um, it's a vortex, and so when you step into the house, you're stepping into putting yourself into a position of being touched by that vortex, which is what happened to Cooper because Cooper, from the time that he was very small, had a vision of a house, a perfect house, his house. And so he was always on the lookout for that. And then when he saw a real estate posting for this house that Rebel had owned, he's like, I have to go. I have to go and look at it. His boyfriend at the time wasn't too happy because, you know, that was money that was being spent on him. But um, and it really he the minute he stepped in onto the property and he looked at that house, he's like, it's mine. He didn't even quibble. He went to the real estate agent and says, what is their offer? What are they asking for? Boom, this is how much that they're asking. Cash due. It literally, like, he's like, I have the cash. Let's sign the papers. I want possession of the house immediately. And it was because it started with a vision
Mm-hmm.
and it just built it on itself. So
But I think that happens a lot when we write. I mean, a character will come or an idea comes during a dream or whatever that just kind of leads us forward.
yeah.
And, characters will, I started Come Out of the Shadows, I think, back in 2022, 2022, 2023. I did not get the inspiration to finish it until last summer. And that's the thing about it. And people don't understand that sometimes characters will be on fire and they will be there and they will give you everything you need. And then it just dries up
Mm-hmm.
and you got nothing.
They
And then,
stopped
of course,
talking.
and then somebody else will come along and say, "Hi, how about me?" And you're like, "No, I got to do this."
Yeah. And I think that's what people don't realize is that as writers, when we're writing, our characters are three-dimensional people that we are, you know, we're almost sitting down having coffee with,
Hmm.
interviewing. and saying, "Hey, tell me about your deepest, darkest fear. What's your deep wound? You know, um, did you have abandonment fears, or do you what are your phobias? You know, um, what what are you afraid of? What what makes you happy?" And I think that plays into it. We really we do all of that.
Oh yeah. I mean, I wrote a scene the other day that's in the upcoming book that I was in tears while I was writing it.
I've got one. Yeah, I just wrote. So Her Mistaken Groom, of course, is now being retitled. There's 20% new content in there. Actually, it's probably going to be closer to 40% by the time I'm done. Because I'm adding a whole new 20K in
Yeah.
there. Um, and in the original version, Elizabeth's brother and her father were both jerks. Her brother more so than her father. Her father was being poisoned, suffering from prolonged poisoning, and he was dying a slow, agonizing death. Um, but he was still a jerk. And in this one, he's not in the rewrite. He's still a jerk, but he's doing it from a place of he knows that when he goes, Elizabeth is going to bear the brunt of her brother's rage, and her brother is not a good person. So he's fully aware that he's being poisoned. He knows he's dying. He knows that Elizabeth needs a strong protector. So that's why he goes through the whole agreeing with Elizabeth's brother Ramsay and marrying her off to Callum because he knows Callum is a man of honor and a man of integrity. And he's fully prepared to hand over his most precious possession, which is his only daughter, to this man who has the reputation of being a brutal, unmerciless warrior, but his clan is well known for having respect for women. So
Okay.
he sees it as an opportunity to save his daughter. And the scene that I recently wrote, it was a death scene from the point of view of the character who was passing away.
Oh,
And it
that's always
was
tough.
it's always it was interesting to write that because we don't really think of that point of view very often, I think. You
No.
know, we always put it as a third person, or we always it's someone on the outside looking in, but to have someone, filled with guilt and remorse and wanting the best for their child, all while knowing that they've wed her off to this brutal warlord, and he wants forgiveness, but he knows he's never going to get it, not in his lifetime anyways. And then just to fade out, it was emotionally
Oh,
draining.
I'm sure. I read a dark romance book, which was, I would say, broke the rules because it had multiple POVs, which is fine. And I don't, it was, I think it was a duet. It wasn't a trilogy. It was a duet. But so the girl was getting revenge. She was getting revenge for what these people had done to her. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So we have her, we have the football player that she's in love with, we have the professor that she's also banging, and then we have the police person that she's also messing with. Okay, that's four POVs. Okay, fine. Oh, wait, we're gonna kill somebody. Guess what? We're getting their POV. Clear out of the blue. No other
Mm-hmm.
POV for this person. Clear out of the blue. Here's a POV. Okay. And I like smut. Don't get me wrong, I like smut, but this book had so much smut in it that I kind of skipped. I started skipping the smut scenes just so I could try to keep up with the plot.
Mm-hmm.
But it was just like every time somebody died, that was the case. Suddenly, we were in their POV. And it was just bizarre because it was like, I've never had that before. So
Oh
does he
yeah.
have some other POVs or
Oh yeah, he's got
okay.
he's got
Yeah.
other point of views in the scene. It's not just a random scene that I threw in there. Um, but I wanted to make him I wanted to redeem him in some fashion. Yes, he made some mistakes, but he wasn't a cruel man in not like his son, not like Ramsay. Ramsay is just cruel because he thirsts for power, and he sees his father as weak, and he sees his sister as an object and a tool to be used, which that time frame they made political alliances with marriages. Women were tools, they were chattel. And so in that sense, it kind of fits, but Ramsey doesn't get any resolution. He doesn't get any redemption either. He winds up dead.
Yeah, but in some cases that might be a benefit to him.
It ultimately was because he made the mistake of underestimating Callum in a lot of ways. And he thought that he could manipulate Callum. And it turns out that Callum was a man of honor and he saw Elizabeth as more than just an object. That was his beloved wife. That was the mother of his children and a member of his clan. And you don't go after a member of his clan who's the mother of his children and the one that holds his heart, even though he didn't realize at the time that Elizabeth was pregnant.
Dun dun dun. So, if somebody wants to pick up copies of the books, you have your own storefront. I mean, yes, you are selling on Amazon and you are selling on Kobo and all that other places. But the benefit of going to Patricia's store is in some cases you're going to get limited editions, in other cases you're going to get sale prices like Rebel and Cooper. Yes, they're on sale. Cooper is free, Rebel is $2. You're not going to get that on Amazon,
No, no. And it's my website, which is also my bookstore, that I release ahead of time. So I release on my website 2 to 4 weeks in advance of anywhere else. So not only can you pick up a book earlier, you also get it for a cheaper price because every single book is discounted comparatively to every other distributor that I deal
and,
with.
and part of the reason you get to do that is because you're you're not getting charged the fees that you get charged for using the other distributors,
That's correct. So more of the money stays in my pocket, which then therefore means that I can give more of a discount to my readers.
which is important. It is very
Hmm.
important. So you have how many books coming up per all your pen names? Because we know we have His to Ruin.
His Tarun is coming out. We are relaunching Her Mistaken Groom, which is now her captive Highland Laird. We have Marley's book, which is right now is the next book in the Agents of Star. It is not currently titled, it's just a working title. So I hesitate to say what that working title
That's fine.
is because I don't want to mislead anyone. Um, Lena's got a new book coming out that is going to be the first book in a shared world called True North Rescuers, and that's as well. Patricia's also got another historical coming out in August that is called The Outlaw's Mistress, which is a Pony Express era novella. And then Elise Wilds also has Bloodbound is going to be coming out. Actually, Bloodbound and Hellbound are going to be on the new Kickstarter, which is going to be run through October. And then they're coming out the beginning of 2027 um, they'll be coming out December on my website, which is sultryreads.com. And they'll be hitting the other storefronts in January of 2027.
But I have to ask, you mentioned Cooper and Rebel and that the house has an issue. Well, is there a book about the house?
There is a book about the house. It's book
Well,
number 3. It is slated for 2027,
okay.
and I don't have a
Okay.
title for it yet.
No, I didn't think you did. But I mean, I had to ask because you've been talking this house up. It would be very disappointing to think that the book does not have, or the house does not have a book.
The house has a book.
Okay. And will we revisit Cooper and Rebel and Gideon?
They are going to be in the book. They're going to play a major part in the book because they are the keys that are going to unlock the secrets of the house.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. Um, yeah. So me on my schedule, the next book I have coming out is in July. So I have a little bit of time, and that's going to be Goldie and the Honey Thief.
Nice. Nice.
And we do
Now,
it.
are
We do.
you going to be doing direct sales?
I have started to put them up for direct sales, but I haven't fully moved them. I just got out of KU with most of my books. So yesterday I spent a good bit of the day relaunching them wide. I still have to put them up on Kobo and still put them up on my own site. So yeah, I plan on doing that as well because Amazon has gotten a little questionable lately. So that's a big thing. Oh, we have a puppy.
We have a puppy.
Hi,
This is
Rusty.
Rusty. Hi,
Hi.
everybody.
He's cute.
He is a
Um,
cutie.
so yeah, I mean, I have Goldie and the Honey Thief, which, I got told already that you made them wait that long to get back together. Well, and then I have my another dark romance coming out, which is Need You Tonight, which deals with obsession, an,
Nice.
an age gap obsession at that. So that'll be interesting to write. So I mean, I don't have as many books on my plate as you do, but I have enough to keep me busy.
Nice. Cool.
So, well, I guess we'll wrap this up for the evening. And I thanks for hanging out with me and chatting. And yeah,
Thanks for hanging out with me.
all right.
We'll see everybody next Wednesday.
Yep. Take care, guys.
Take care.
Hold on. As I